What if I told you that an electric car is actually not that much more environmentally friendly than a conventional car and is certainly less wallet friendly? Now wait a minute, you might be saying, I know that the last one is true because electric cars are far more expensive than conventional gas-powered cars, but when a car runs on electricity, it doesn't emit any CO2. But if it runs on gasoline, it emits a lot of CO2, carbon dioxide. Well, this is not exactly true because while the electric car itself doesn't produce any CO2, the machines that build it do, the power plant and that give it electricity do, and the machines that will eventually scrap it do. Now let's start with the production for electric and conventional cars. An electric car, on average, is responsible for 25,000 pounds of CO2 just from its production, whereas a conventional car is only responsible for 16,000 pounds. Now, part of this 9,000 pound difference comes from the fact that to build an electric car, you must mine lithium to build the batteries. Now, the mining of lithium is not at all an environmentally friendly practice, and is actually worse than emitting some extra CO2. But just how much is some extra CO2? Well, a Tesla, on average, which is an electric car, will produce about 44 metric tons of CO2 over its whole lifetime. And this 44 metric tons comes from its manufacturing, the power plants that will give it electricity, and machines that will scrap it. Now, when taking into account the factories that will produce, say, an Audi Quattro, all the gasoline that will burn over its lifetime, and its ultimate scrapping, it'll be about 49 metric tons of CO2. And this is over a 90,000 mile lifetime. So this means that the Tesla only saves about 5 metric tons of CO2 compared to the Audi. Now, how does this work in terms of dollars? Well, it takes about $7 to reduce emissions by 1 metric ton. So this means that the Tesla should be about, $35 more than an Audi? This is not the case, though. And the reason why is because the electric car manufacturers are subsidized by the federal government to the tune of $7,500 per car. Now, an extra $7,500 per car, when it should be only $35 more, is a terrible trade-off, right? Now, I did mention that the power plants that produce electricity for electric cars produce CO2. Well, the reason why I say that is because fossil fuels, the collective name for coal, oil, and natural gas, are responsible for 63% of U.S. electrical power production. Coal, specifically, takes up 30% of that market. Natural gas is responsible for 32% electrical power production, and oil is responsible for 1%. Now let's compare it with the other power sources. Nuclear produces 20%, and then all the renewables, which includes solar, wind, and hydroelectric energy produced by dams, is 17%. But much of that 17% is done by the hydroelectric power plants, and then from others like geothermal energy, or biomass, or biofuel, which leaves solar with 1.6% of the share of production, and wind with 6.7%. So a combined total of almost 8% of electrical power production. Now then, and why couldn't we just build more solar and wind? Because it's ghastly expensive to build those things, and they always have to be built with some other sort of power source for the sheer reason that the sun is not always shining for solar power plants to produce electricity, and the wind is not always blowing for windmills. And typically, the power plant that's built alongside it is some sort of fossil fuel plant. Take, for example, Germany. Germany leads the world in solar and wind energy, yet when those power plants cannot produce electricity, they switch over to the coal-powered ones. So as Germany has increased its renewable energy sources, it has also increased CO2 emissions because they must be built with that coal-fired power plant that can keep the lights running when solar and wind cannot deliver. Now wait a minute, you might be saying, sure, electric cars technically then run on coal or natural gas, but surely that is better for the environment than the oil that a conventional car runs on, right? Not really. The reason why this argument could be made is because as the power plants are far away from cities, is where most people live, whereas as conventional cars are right in the middle of the city and will just give people more exposure to CO2. Well, the fact of the matter is pollution spreads, and coal-fired power plants produce a lot more CO2 than these gas-powered cars in the cities. According to the National Academy of Sciences, if there was a 10% increase in electric cars in the US, 16,000 more people, or rather 1,600 more people would die each year from climate-related deaths. Whereas if gas-powered cars went up by 10%, that number would only be about 870 people from climate-related deaths. So when you take those numbers into account, that means that increasing electric cars or usage would kill twice as many people as increasing gas-powered car usage. So next time you want to buy a car, just remember this: is the electric car that you're thinking about buying just might be a little worse than that conventional car that you're thinking about buying. I'm Zion Weir, and this has been Patriot Weir's Soapbox.